Well, good afternoon to all of our viewers and welcome to Let's Talk. Let's Talk, of course, is an interactive talk show that discusses real issues and provide meaningful solutions. We are delighted to have you with us this afternoon as we tackle the very important question of youth conservation and retention. Here at the South Leeward Mission, we do believe that uh, we are not afraid to address real issues, and we want to engage all of our viewers in finding meaningful solutions to some of the issues that confront us. We have this afternoon a very high-powered delegation, or rather panelists, for most part so far on Let's Talk. I have been talking to one individual, but when we have an issue as significant as the one we are going to be discussing this afternoon, which is the issue relating to our young people, to the youths of the Seventh Adventist Church, we do need to get a wide cross-section. So we have representing this afternoon the youth department from every level of the organization. We do have with us our youth director here at the South Leeward Conference in the person of Pastor Carl Hastings. Pastor Hastings is one of our outstanding young pastors. He has a passion for young people. He studied at Caribbean Union College. He holds a bachelor's in theology and also a master's in pastoral theology. He is the youth director for the conference. He also serves as the publishing director. And we want to welcome him to Let's Talk this afternoon. Pastor Hastings, good afternoon. Just a word of greetings to the viewers.
Good afternoon, and I want to say greetings to all our listeners, in particular our senior youth leaders and our young people who are watching and listening to the program this afternoon.
Well, in addition to Pastor Hastings, we do have Pastor Anthony Hall. The name Pastor Anthony Hall is a household name in the Caribbean. Pastor Anthony Hall holds a Bachelor of Arts degree from Andrews University, Bering Spring, Michigan. He is, of course, a Seventh Adventist pastor since 1991. He was a colleague of mine in Caribbean Union College, now the University of the Southern Caribbean. I know for a long time that Pastor Hall has significant interest in youth ministry. In the days when we were in Caribbean Union College, he was the Pathfinder director there at the college church. We are so delighted to have with us this afternoon Pastor Anthony Hall. But let me tell you a little bit more about him. In October 2002, he earned a Bachelor of Law, LLB degree from the University of the West Indies. And on October 9, 2004, he graduated from the Sir Hugh Wooding Law School. On the 24th of October, that same year, 2004, he was admitted to the Supreme Court of Barbados as an attorney at law and became a member of the Barbados Bar Association. So he is pastor, youth director, attorney at law. He is currently the Youth Chaplaincy and Public Campus Ministries Director of the Caribbean Union. Pastor Hall lives by the philosophy that the purpose of life is not to be happy, but to matter, to be productive, to be useful, and to have it make some difference that you have lived at all. Very significant. We are happy to have Pastor Hall with us this afternoon on Let's Talk. Pastor Hall, good day. Welcome to the South Leeward Conference. Welcome to Let's Talk. Just greet those who are listening.
We can't hear you, Elder.
Yeah, good afternoon, President Green. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thanks for the introduction, and good afternoon, everybody.
Okay, wonderful. Welcome again. And of course, from the Inter-American Division, we do have our youth director, Pastor Al Powell. It is not often that we're able to get the services of the men and women who serve us at the division level. But this afternoon, we are so delighted that Pastor Al Powell has consented to join us. He, of course, is the youth director, as we said. Pastor Powell studied business administration at the Northern Caribbean University and later theology at the Adventist University in Costa Rica. Later, he earned a master's in business administration at the University of Liverpool in England, and is now completing his master's in family therapy from Andrews University in extension there in Peru. Pastor Al Powell is the youth director, as I indicated, of the Inter-American Division. He is the one who supervises the youth work across this vast division, has tremendous experience. He served as a church administrator, departmental director, secretary, president of conferences, and of course, also as youth director. We are delighted to have you with us, Pastor Powell. Welcome to the South Leeward Conference, and welcome to Let's Talk. Just greet the saints today.
Dr. Green, it's such a privilege to be here with you this evening. I am elated to be with my colleagues, and shout out greetings to all of you across the South Leeward Conference, to the young people, to the not so young, and I believe that the impact that you're given with the leadership has been tremendous, and I pray that this evening would be an added blessing to the folks here and to the team. Thank you so much, Doctor.
Amen, amen. Well, as indicated earlier, we are going to be discussing today the matter of youth conservation and retention. The Seventh-day Adventist Church has a very interesting origin, of course, grounded in scripture, but I'm making the point that in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, we like to say, to boast, you may say, that this church was started in part by young people. Most of the early pioneers were individuals in their teens and early 20s. So we do have a heritage in youth ministry, individuals who worked tirelessly for God in those early years. And over the years, we have seen a very strong movement in our youth across the Seventh-day Adventist Church. This afternoon, we want to begin by looking at the worldwide church and ask the question, how young is the Seventh-day Adventist Church? What do the statistics say about the proportion of young people that we have in our church across the world? Let's talk about that a little bit. Who shall begin that discussion?
Well, I could begin to discuss to my panelists. Good to see you, Pastor Hastings, and Pastor Hall as well. It's such a joy to be amongst men of the cloth. And,
thank you, Pastor.
And this evening, the Adventist Church has grown tremendously throughout the years. I remember when we used to talk about small quantities. Now we're talking about over 21 million persons who are members of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Analyzing the Seventh-day Adventist Church and the youth ministry, it is important for us to understand the statistics. Worldwide, we have about those that are registered and youth department ministries that serve. We have over 1/3 of them. We have over 7 million young persons. Of course, we have, that's probably just the upper young persons. We have those that are in teens and younger than that. So it is quite a large number of young persons that are represented. And people may say it's about 33%. That varies because there's some conferences and some unions that might be equivalent of 70%. And I know the Caribbean Union, you could speak to that, a large number of persons within the union and within the South Leeward Conference. So it varies, but there's a strong contingency of young persons within the church that really need to be focused upon.
Okay, very well. Pastor Hall, do you want to add any perspective from the Caribbean Union?
Yes, thank you very, very much. We have statistics that were given recently by our executive secretary. We know that the church is kind of putting on everybody on an electronic database, membership-wise, and all of our conferences and missions are not yet on that database, but from what we have been able to determine, we are observing that from 7 years old up to about 35 years old represents about 45% of the church here in the Caribbean Union. So we know that that will not include adventurers, for example, that we now begin around down to 4 years old and so on. So I'm thinking that we're pretty close, Pastor Green, to maybe 50% of our church in the Caribbean Union being persons 35 or under. That is clear to me from recent statistics given to us a little more than maybe 2-3 weeks ago.
So it is interesting if we have a church where we're talking about below the age of 35, and we're talking about 45%. It's significant because Pastor Powell mentioned when we consider the worldwide figures, we're talking in the region of at least a minimum of 7 million persons. We are, that is a significant number of young people. Pastor Hastings, let's bring you in here. In the South Leeward Conference, we do have a vast number of young people, don't we?
Yes, we do. In fact, the statistics in South Leeward Conference would differ slightly with our youth between 7 and 35, making roughly 50% of the organization based on the statistics. And when you include the adventure age, that would send it up to roughly 70-75% of our people that are baptized here in the South Leeward Conference. So again, a large percentage of our membership is made up of our young people.
So now that we understand that we are talking in some instances 50% or more of the youth in the church, it means definitely that we cannot afford to ignore this demographic of our church, the potential that these young people have. And if we go back to how the church started, I did make reference to the fact that in our very early years, we did see young people leading out in proclaiming the Advent message and telling people in our very early stages the need to commit to Jesus Christ. These are individuals who stood up and readied themselves for what they felt at that time, at least, was the second coming of Jesus Christ. Now, what are the implications? What do we do with these numbers? And how can we harness these people? Let's talk a little bit about the youth ministry. What are we currently doing in the Seventh-day Adventist Church in the region and across the world? What do we have? Peradventure, there is somebody who is joining the discussion this afternoon and does not understand Seventh-day Adventist youth ministry. Just speak to the issue of what we are doing around the world in terms of youth ministry.
Well, Pastor, very often when we speak of youth ministries, people do not always have the full cognition that we're talking about a widespread of ministries provided for young people. Youth ministries is an umbrella term, an umbrella body that speaks to those ministries that provide for young children in the Adventurer program, in the Pathfinder program. And then we include the leaders of those uniform bodies, people that we call master guides. And still, in some territories of the Caribbean Union, we have ambassadors. Beyond that, you now have the young adult ministry, the senior ministry, beginning at 16 and going onward, that speaks about Adventist youth societies. So all of that represents a series of clubs and structures that try to minister to all ages and all categories of young persons beginning around 4 years old. Now, the importance of that is that we try to deliver content at an age and stage that is relevant for everybody, so that young children experience Adventism and Christianity in a way that they can understand, perceive, relate to, and live. But the same principles of the church will then be repeated with greater depth of thought for people in the older categories. So I want to make that clear. We capture a wide range of ages, and there's something inside there we think for everybody in terms of the structure of youth ministry.
Okay, very well. Now, I know others want to join in, but now we know when we have a good discussion, time moves very quickly. So I do want to hurry up and get to some significant areas here. We do have a very active youth membership. We do baptize lots of people every year. The church is growing very quickly. But we also, on the other hand, see a very vexing problem. Lots of our young people are leaving the church. Some years ago, in fact, the Office of Archives and Statistics of the General Conference, they have been conducting research on church conservation, church retention since 1965. And I was privileged to attend a seminar the other day, and they did indicate that a significant number of people leave the church every year. In fact, in some instances, it is showing around 40%, which is not good at all. And the alarming thing is that most of the people who seem to be leaving the church are individuals between the ages of 18 and 25. Let's talk to that. How much of a challenge is that?
And I'm happy you brought that up, Elder. It is true. Church statistics currently show back from 65 and over 50 years that we have had 40% leaving the church. However, the good thing is that trend is changing. Current statistics now show that we have about 600,000 out of 21 million that may be leaving. So that statistic dramatically changed. However, you made a germane point of 18 to 25% leaving the church. 18 to 25 persons between age group between 18 and 25 are leaving the church. And that is a grave concern for us in our churches, as youth ministers, directors, pastors, etc. Because what do we do about that situation? And why is that happening is another question I would probably add to it. I could probably just hasten that these statistics are not just here linked to the Adventist church. This is a global problem. When you study other faiths, evangelistic Protestant faiths share the same statistics between 18 to 22, the young adults are leaving the church, saying 66% of teens leave the church when they reach this age. Imagine that. And that is alarming. Why they are leaving the church? What are we doing about it? I am glad to say, and I could just basically mention why, because they're showing it 5 main reasons why they leave. 24% leave because they feel that they're too busy, work is preventing them. 25% with this survey shows that they have left because of the church's stance or political issues. 29 has shown why is because they feel like they're not connected with the church. And also 32% said it's because of they feel that they're hypocrites, judgmental persons. And this one I want to chime in on. 34% of the respondents says, I moved to a college or studied, I stopped studying at the church. This is the main reason why people do leave the church. At that age, we're doing very well at the younger age levels. I guess you'll discuss that. But that age is what we have to target. And the Adventist churches make a deliberate effort to involve these young persons that are at this age. And we are using the program. We have, for this quinquennium, Pass It On. This is a very active program in our division, in our unions, and our conferences, getting young people involved. These youth at this age, if you get them involved, if you keep them target and focus, let them feel a part of the group, then this will help with retention. I must also say that the church right now, as we're planning the Inter-American Division with the new quinquennium, as we're beginning, we are making a deliberate effort. This is unofficial, but you'll hear of it, that each evangelistic program, we're going to include a 6-week retention, initial retention program for them, and that will continue. And I think that is critical. The Pass It On that we have within the month of June is allow the young people to feel a part, to give them their voice, to show that they can contribute. And for us, those that are older, to give them a support level that they really need. And I think this is something that the church is intentionally doing. And as we target in this area, it can happen with the pastors, with the elders, with everybody on board, given this emphasis of involving the young people will be critical and will be an asset to the Adventist church.
Okay, very well, very comprehensive, Pastor Powell. Now, we do have here levels, various levels. We have the conference, the union, and the division. To some extent, Pastor Hastings, you, in terms of organizational level, we may want to say that you are closer to the young people on the ground. Yes. And so I want to ask you, what are young people telling you as a youth director? What are some of the challenges they're facing? What are they saying? Why they are finding discontent? And some of them. Pastor Powell mentioned a few factors, which we will get back to, but I want to hear what people are saying on the ground. Pastor Hastings.
One of the things I want to say before I go into that is that survey and statistics that have been done 10 years ago today will be vastly different. And so this is important to understand because we do have new generations of persons coming on the scene. Some of the things that I've been hearing locally in the South Leeward Conference is one, the church is overprotective. And this overprotectiveness does not give young people the opportunity to be adventurous, to go outside of the perimeters. And so they feel a little bit hemmed in, boxed in. And so they're uncomfortable with that. Also, they're saying that Christianity is very shallow in our approach, in our teachings, and in other things. Those are some things coming forth, that we are shallow in our doctrinal issues and so on. And so again, that seems to be a boxed in kind of issue they're coming out once again. Also, they think that we are antagonistic to ideas that are outside of our thinking. And so we don't give toward or lend towards. I don't know how true this is. Listening attentively to others when they speak of their own perception and their own thinking on a given point. Also, in terms of sexuality, and we have to realize that this is a big issue right now. It's also a vexing issue in the church. In relation to sexuality, they think our viewpoint are simplistic and are judgmental to a great degree. And so it becomes a serious problem to young people in our approach to them if they do not see eye to eye with us in terms of their sexuality or the way they go about it. The final point I want to make mention of, and maybe to some extent I would have seen this in operation, where they think that the church feels unfriendly to individuals who are struggling with doubts, whether doubts on the doctrines of the church or doubts in other areas. They think that the church is very unfriendly to people who have ideas that seem to go cut across the grain. It's not that they don't want to discuss, they want to discuss with us, they want to talk with us, but sometimes they're afraid to open up on the ideas that are outside of the trend of the church, basically.
Thank you so much, Pastor Hastings. Pastor Hall, one of the things I did not say when I introduced you is that you worked on a college campus, on a university campus, and you worked as Dean of Students, I think. So let's hear your perspective from interacting with young people on a college campus. You know, a college campus is a place where we do get, perhaps some people like to say, the cream of the crop and the ideas, the trends. So from your experience, working there at the University of the Southern Caribbean and interacting with the young people, give us a sense of what people are thinking and what the challenges may be.
I concur with all that the previous two speakers have said, but what I will tell you is this, right? At the very bottom level, the church is competing with the world, and the world is for many young persons more attractive than the church, because the world does not impose on them restrictions very often about conduct and behavior. And the church, especially the Seventh-day Adventist Church, has many rules, biblical rules and other standards that hem people in and seek to control outcomes and behavior. Now, people don't like that. Even on the university campus where we speak about the cream of the crop, we have problems with attendance at church. We have problems in attendance at AY. Those who eventually lead our church very often are the ones who go to our colleges and universities. But while they are there, they are challenged. And quite frankly, I think it is very, very simple. All of what they're saying is true. But when you boil that whole thing down, the attractiveness of the world, of secular living, is what is defeating us, because it is attractive, it is popular, it is demanding, but the church has not been able to keep pace, even though we have a quality product, in portraying and presenting that product in a way that fits with the attractiveness and the allurements of the world. That's my assessment of it. So people feel freer, less judged, less restricted. So they walk away where they can be themselves totally, and nobody makes any judgment about that. But the church cannot be like that. The church is the place that have to judge behavior. To me, it's the nature of biblical understanding, not judgment in terms of salvation but in terms of conduct. And you will get that. But young people want to be in a place where nobody tells them you are wrong. The prevailing sentiment in the world today is that everybody is right and everybody has a choice, and whatever they want to choose should not be tampered with or interfered with. And I think that is my perspective on the thing. And the university level and college level of the church is not really any better for it being the Mecca. The serious challenges exist there also.
Now, isn't it not true that many of these individuals who leave the church during this age period, 18 to 25, eventually come back when they are much older? And if that is so, then how do we explain this?
It's an amazing thing. Let me throw this quickly. Sometimes the only
that which I
relates to what children say to me. And sometimes in our worship sessions and so on, my children would say, Daddy, you know, we who are born to Adventist parents and we've been raised up in the church have not really had opportunity to experience what some of our friends and people we meet talk about. We hear in the church talking about how they came to the Lord. You know, they were out there doing this and they were doing that, and they had to leave that to come to the Lord. But Daddy, what have we left? What we haven't done anything. We've always been here, right here where the Lord is and where the church is. So I think that transfers into a wider scope where young people feel they have not enjoyed life. They have not enjoyed the world. Those who are born into Adventism seek, when they become old enough to disobey their parents with impunity, to say, well, now I can walk away from this. I can go and do the parties. I can go and do the secular things that were denied me all the while. And they go that way, they find it unfulfilling, and then they return. That's the reality. So they seem to want their opportunity to be bad.
I would agree with the previous contributions. And I think also, if you look at it, age 18, what happens when a person becomes 18? Legally, they become an adult. Legally, they can make their choices. So I do believe that at that point, 18 to 25, it is begun before then, where young people are deciding what they will do. They have heard counsels, they have grown up at the Pathfinder club, etc. Now they're reaching to a stage, they have to make a critical choice. Am I going to stay in with what I knew, or I'm going to experiment with the unknown? And additionally, we may find persons, as the Bible tells us, train up a child in the way he should grow, and when he is old, he'll not depart. When he's old, he comes to his sense. Many times young people come back because they realize, hey, what I learned when I was a teenager, when I learned was an adventure, it was a protective means. And that's why the little world exposure that I've received, it's not worth it. Let me come back. Unfortunately, young people get caught up sometimes with drugs, get up with a different lifestyle, and it makes it difficult, even though they want to return. I believe what is germane to help us is we have to look at the generation gaps and understanding of philosophies of leadership. The old philosophy of leadership does not work. We have the baby boomers, you have right now, the changing of generations, the millennials, we have the generation Z, and these young people think different. Stories told years back when persons that came out of World War II, they were looked at when they wanted managers of organization. They said, once you have army experience, you have no other capacity, you can then become a leader. And they would put them into leadership. And people responded to that autocratic leadership. They responded to say, yes, because my boss said so, I will do so. However, in this day and age, it's a whole different type of mentality. And I believe we ought to realize that it is, the young people are not saying, no, don't do it because I told you to, but because of our trust in our relationship, because I have developed a bond and I have confidence in you. And now I can come to the point where I can come with me with a different attitude where we can reason together, we can work together. And I think that is critical for us. I'll summarize with this. Young people in this day and age are not so much concerned. They don't leave because of doctrinal issues. They don't leave because of the core principles of the church. Sometimes whenever they go through that transition to adulthood, if we have not connected with them in terms of a relationship, and they have nobody to say, not just interested in my church going, but interested in my normal life with my normal challenges. Once we get to that point, that I'm going through my struggles, like Pastor Hall said, I have more exposure to pornography. I have more exposure to everything at my hands, my footprints or my fingertips. Now, once they have that relationship with older persons that don't come with that autocratic leadership, but say, listen, I want to hear your story. I want to see how you're going through. And now I can come next to my adult, trusted friends instead of going to the teenagers and say, listen, I'm tempted like this. I'm tempted like this. What do you think? And then it makes a difference with that mentorship. And I think if we harness that relationship and with that trust, not because of autocratic movements, I believe that bond will hold these young people during that critical age of them getting that freedom, that 18 to 25, where they may have been before that saying, I just want to try that, but I'm waiting for the age. And I think that is critical.
Now, very interesting indeed. But we do want to give some attention to what our viewers are saying and are asking. So I wanted this time now to look towards some of the questions that have been posed. And one of the first questions this afternoon was, do you think, therefore, the church is doing its best to capture and keep the youth in the church? And what can we do? So first question, are we really doing our best?
No.
Go ahead, Pastor.
Let me tell you why I think. I feel very strongly about this, and sometimes it can come over offensive, especially to those who are closest to the membership. But I want to be honest about it because I don't think there's any other way we could be about it. The church is not doing its best. The reality is that those who are closest to the young people are the leaders of the local church, led by the pastor, and the elders who have authority to make decisions in the church. And then there are a range of people who lead the youth ministries. These leaders, I do not think always do their best. And sometimes it's due to ignorance.
Yes, I believe so.
They may not have, as Pastor Paul was hinting at, the requisite knowledge to know the times and know how to amend and adapt their method of approach to meeting the ministerial needs of these young persons. So I think more of our immediate church leadership, and I'm not talking about youth leaders, I am talking about elders and pastors, need to attend some more of these training workshops, need to get involved in understanding the nature of the ministry, need to get into the uniforms, need to be among the young people, because the pastor may place a lot of emphasis on the midday hour, but maybe not as much emphasis on the afternoon meeting when the young people get together in the afternoon. So I am saying that I do not think that our local leadership is doing its very best. Sometimes it's because they're busy with so many things. The pastor has many, many things to do. He has to go to the hospital. He has to be in this and that. But certainly we are not offering our young people the best because we are not there with them. We're not present physically and emotionally and spiritually, and we're not guiding the process. We leave them on their own too much. And very often when we plan our conventions and our big occasions, we have a well-set plan for the adults, no set plan for the young people.
Well, in fact, Pastor Hastings and I were discussing the whole matter of youth leadership just a few days ago. So it's interesting that you're bringing that. But let me put this into, because, you know, while I was doing my doctoral program, I was doing research and I was seeking to assess the whole concept of the relevance of sermonizing on our young people. And so I had a series of focus groups. And when I talked to the young people, many of them reported that while they like the idea of going to church and they believe in sermon, etc., many of them said that a lot of times the sermons are not relevant to their needs. And they think that the only time they're referenced is when the pastor or the elder wants to make a bad example. So they're listening and they're feeling as though, you know, they're only used when it's time to point out something negative. And that's very interesting.
Hello,
I don't want to.
I just want to make a quick statement, observation. I think you're on target. Unless we spend time with the young people, we will not be able to minister to them. And that is, it is critical. I have, as a minister, as I visit persons in the community, or visit my members, when I get to know their needs, then I am able to deliver my sermons for the times, signs of the times. This is what is relevant. I think that is critical. My personal view, I ask my young boys, I have young men, I should say, an 18-year-old, and one is becoming 20 in a month. What attracts, what makes you want to go to a church? What it does, they have traveled all over the place and they say, Daddy, the church that involves makes me feel a part of the church. That's the church that I believe young people will flock and go to. It is critical, and we are doing well. Sometimes it's because of lack of understanding and knowledge, but I believe we could do more. And evaluate yourself. If you're a leader that is listening, Pastor Hall made reference to this. Sometimes we're speaking to the wrong crowd. If we're speaking just to youth leaders and we're speaking just to young people, and the pastors and the leaders are not listening, this is a coalition, a corporate ministry in order to make it effective. This is key. And that's why we should be there. Evaluate yourself as a leader. If you're listening, are you there when the young people have their program? What about church service? A lot of people believe the church service is 11 o'clock on Sabbath, and it dwindles out during AY or Adventist youth services. I think that is a critical decision that we have to do and to contribute. I end with this. My mother, I grew up in a household. My mother was an Adventist. Praise God for her leadership. My father was not. Later, I had the privilege as a pastor to baptize my father because he was an unbeliever. But my mother said this to me. She said to me, as I was growing up and I was, a young teenager, she says, the reason why I attend church with you, and I would attend to every service that existed. We would go to the morning service, we would go to the Bible class, we would go to the AY, we would go to the Sunday and Wednesday. And my mother said, it's not because I am not tired, I don't go there. I just go there to support you. And I think that is critical as we go forward to leading and guiding young people and help with this situation, is being there for them. I think that's a critical thing that we need to do to help with that retention. And each person should evaluate themselves. How much genuine interest have I shown, even outside of church services?
Amen. I want to come back to something that Pastor Powell mentioned, but before that, let me take Pastor Hastings. You were making.
Yes, let me quickly say, I do not want to multiply the words of our Inter-American Division Youth Leader and Caribbean Union Youth Leader. So I'm just going to give two illustrations. The churches that are doing the best where youth ministry is concerned during these COVID times are churches where their pastors take an intentional and key role in making sure that AY continues. And that just what Pastor Hall just said in relation to, but I'm going to be fair to our leaders. I don't know if we can get into that discussion this afternoon. Something happened during the 80s, late 80s, 90s, that I think ruptured the relationship between our local leaders, whether it be pastor, elder, and others, and the youth ministry. And I think there is where we started having some issues. We might not be able to do that. But the second thing I want to bring up here, and I want to give credence and to commend highly Pastor Powell, our Inter-American Division Youth Director, for initiating this plan of the Youth Leader Training Certification Program. And again, we are seeing that most of our local leaders did not take opportunity of this training that I think was very relevant, on time, and was truly an inspiration during these COVID times. It was announced, it was shared, and I know it's not for lack of advertising our program. So I know it went out to the churches, but our leaders just did not take advantage of this opportunity. And I think that we're going to be poor for it going forward. And I'm hoping, I'm reaching out to Pastor Hall here, Pastor Powell here, to keep the program open. So just in case others are listening to this program, realize that they have missed something, that they will truly try to sign up and get the training done.
Can I put a plug in this, Pastor Dr. Green? Just to make reference to this, if I may.
Right ahead.
Thank you, Elder. I want the leaders to understand that when we discuss this mentorship or this training program, I met with the administration of the division. They said what you're doing, this should go beyond just training young people or youth leaders. It should be extended to pastors. It should be extended to administrators. It should be expanded to the church and church leaders as elders as well. Because as we make use of this material, our minds and our understanding, our ignorance would fade away, and we'll get to understand what we have as young people, the capacity of the young people. If we were to engage these young people in active duty, if you understand the term, as the militaries, if we were to engage them, our work would be so much easier, and they have so much dynamic ways in order to get and strengthen the work. And I'll just end with this. We looked at it. Right now we have, last on record, we have had persons within the division territory, a total that was certified. We have over about 15,000 persons that have registered. We have given over 10,000 certificates, but because people are catching on and understanding importance, we have decided to make a deliberate effort. So during the month of June, we say we're going to keep this program open, and we want our elders, we want our leaders to also join, because it's going to be a vast difference on your future understanding and leadership. Just to put for those persons that are listening, if you want to sign up, it's www.iadayonline.org. Go on and sign up, and you will be, it's a life-changing experience that we want for all of our persons to understand young people and to lead our church.
Okay, very well. Now we want to get back to one or two of the questions that are on the panel. Our time is running quickly by. So there are a number of exchanges on our chat board here, but this one caught my attention. This young man says, I know of one church here where most of the young people have left because when they messed up, so to speak, the senior members were very critical and judgmental. Let's talk about that a little bit.
I am not aware of that church. However, I can attest to the fact that it is very true that our senior leaders especially can be very critical of our youth when they make mistakes. We have to understand that the young people of today, they are not like the young people of our generation. Pastor Powell put the nail on the head when he said that the way we deal with the baby boomers coming right back to this generation, we have to deal with these people differently. The quicker we learn how to deal with them and how to get past their challenges and their situations, the quicker we will win them, and they will remain in the church and be a positive influence on the church to help the church in its forward progression.
Now, I was at the church this morning, and we you know, here in Antigua, we opened churches starting today. Some of our congregations were open. And at the church I was at this morning, there was a particular young man. He's not from this territory, but because of his time in the country, he found it necessary to go to the church. He has been very active, very involved. Did my heart good to see that he came here to study, and he found himself a church, and he was using his musical abilities to assist the program of the church, etc. And the church thought of just giving recognition to him today as he is now preparing to leave the island. But when he got up to make a remark, he said, the first time I came to this church, and he gave the date when he came the first time. He said, I left that Sabbath, and I'm paraphrasing here, left that Sabbath deciding never to come back to this church again, because he said, I came to the church, I sat down, nobody welcomed me, nobody said happy Sabbath, nobody at all in this church, and this is a large church, noticed that here was the presence of a visitor. Thankfully, he did come back sometime, and when he visited the second time, the reception was quite different. You know, he said there was a young man that sat beside him, took his telephone number, called him to encourage him, etc. And so the friendliness of our church can be a big factor. That's what I think people talking about here when they're saying, you know, I do something wrong, nobody's giving me support, I'm being chastised. We are not making an excuse for sin here, but we are suggesting that there is something called loving support and encouragement. And I think this, to a great extent, is necessary in the Seventh Adventist churches today.
Yeah, Pastor Green, let me join in here. I'm glad you said the last few points you made there. Now, there's no secret for those who know me and hear me that I'm a stickler for standards. And I want to make it clear that you cannot condone bad behavior. All right, so young people that I deal with need to understand, and I always try to get them to understand that if you've done something wrong, you've done something wrong. Now, here's the problem though. Very often the adults who censure youth, I'm gonna say conduct, not taking the time to befriend them first. So a pastor or an elder or an adult in the church says something to a young person in an attempt to censure and correct their behavior. And they may very well be right in what they're putting forward, but they have no foundation, no relationship, no connectivity to that young person to speak that way to them. I have found that when you are accustomed being among the young persons, rubbing shoulders with them, playing with them, enjoying the silly games, I'm going to put it that way, jumping up and down, stealing Miss Liza, whatever the case may be, going to their cookouts, being with them at the beach, that when a time comes that you need to speak truth to power, they are more willing to hear that than if you are some standoffish, aloof person who have never spoken to them before, except to tell them that sex outside of marriage is wrong. So there needs to be a relationship that allows you to correct behavior. And if you have the relationship, you cannot correct the behavior. That's my view.
Well said, Amen. Well said. Now, I want to go back to something Pastor Powell mentioned earlier when we looked at the statistics, and he was talking about reasons why people leave the church. Now, he did indicate that there is, I think he did mention 35% or so of individuals moved away. They went to study. They ended up in a situation where the university or college where they were studying was not a church-owned institution, and they had no motivation. So I'm now looking at other trends, the impact of, let's say, Christian education on people. Now, the research does show that Christian education is one of the strongest factors that cause people to remain in the church. Can we speak to that just for about 2 minutes or so, because our time is winding down? Sounds like I have to call somebody. Pastor Powell.
Before we take that, I just want to revert to make a statement, a support of what you guys have said in terms of the question that was raised. Sometimes we are very hard, and sometimes we do things with lack of knowledge of the results of what will happen. And for young people that have had, I find this not just unique to that conference, but throughout the church in general. Sometimes we do not get things right. Sometimes our intentions are not shown the correct way, and sometimes we hurt people. So on behalf of the church, I have to apologize for the lack of knowledge and understanding of leadership sometimes, and why we do, and the way we do handle certain issues. And I do believe that should be dealt with. And like what Pastor Hall mentioned, the church manual says before any disfellowship or any removal from membership, it has to be an interest to win back the person. And I think that we fail in that area. In terms of the Adventist church, I must say that the ideal is Christian education at all levels, especially a young person is going off to college. In that window of between 18 to 25 is when he will do his tertiary education. And it's critical to do the best thing for yourself, to seek to get yourself into a Christian institution. Not saying that that's going to be perfect, but of course, we have seen reflections where this is an asset to you getting, while you get that independence from home, you will get that encouragement in that institution. However, that's not always possible. And I thank God for other ministries. We have now a PCM ministry that is trying to get young people engaged while they are, because we find you lose young people if they're not engaged. If they've lost their purpose is where we lose them. So we want to encourage them to do that. And it is an added plus to find this Christian education. It is a sacrifice, but see what can be done, because those are the critical numbers and ages of where we lose persons.
I wanted to make a quick comment about the public campus ministries, the PCM movement that Pastor Powell just mentioned. At the union, I have responsibility for that, and we're trying to get our directors into that ministry more and more. I want to make this point. When you have a college or university age student, and they are deep into academics, they're studying either first degree, or some of them later on in life and go to the master's level. The type of content that you present in church, whether it be AY or even the sermon or in Sabbath school lesson study, the people who are very academically inclined, you've got to lift the standard a notch. Because I think that's one thing that our church does not always get, that in order to maintain the interest and retain the person in the congregation who is academic, who is bright, who is at that level of inquiry into deep things, the presentation and quality of what we do also has to reach that level. Now, it is true that the gospel is for simple people and everybody, and it's simple and so on. But I am saying that leaders who present programs of any type, including sermons, cannot come cold turkey and wishy-washy and meet the excellent minds of young people who are in universities and hold their attention if they do not do proper research, proper presentations, and content that is rich enough to absorb and interest those types of minds. So I think it is a whole new ministry that we need to engage college level students at a deeper level, at a more fundamental level, and perhaps slightly more academic as well, in order to maintain their interests.
Pastors, this has been a very intriguing discussion. We have not touched nearly half the issues that we want to talk about, which means that I'm going to ask you now for your commitment to rejoin us sometime in the near future. Can't give you a date yet. And I'm going to take your silence as a yes. One of the things,
yes, we will.
Thank you so much. One of the things that we are also, just for our viewers' attention, we will in the future talk to some young people who have literally left the church and hear from them what were the factors, because we want to be real on this program. And, you know, why did you leave, and so that we can respond more appropriately. I do need to say before I leave a few things. Number one is we want to remind all of you that as soon as we finish here, there is an AY program right on this YouTube channel. The Montserrat AY Society is going to be sponsoring the AY this afternoon, so we want to join, ask all of our viewers to join in. We have been discussing youth issues, and they are going to be sharing a very important youth program this afternoon. I like the emphasis that will be placed there, so we want to invite all of our viewers to rejoin. Secondly, someone on the chat did say, please like the videos, it will encourage more people to see, and I just want to thank you for saying that. And so we want to ask all of you, if there's anybody on our YouTube chat who has not yet subscribed, we're going to ask you to push that subscribe button and also like the chat, the videos, because that helps us to gain more mileage. So thank you for making that wonderful suggestion. And you know, we did not discuss or touch the area of the Pathfinder program. I did have a question. I'm going to throw the question. We don't have time to answer it now, but in the Caribbean context, you know, we noticed that there are lots of people who are in the Pathfinder program, and then when they leave Pathfinders, they disappear. So should we not critique the Pathfinder program to talk about its real relevance, and do we need to do something about it? But we will discuss that in part 2 or maybe part 3, because there is so much involved here. I'm going to ask our panelists to wrap up, to give a minute, because it's 4 o'clock, and as I indicated, we have an amazing AY program that is coming up shortly, and we don't want to rob the young people of the time. But we want to ask you to give a closing summary. We're going to begin with Pastor Carl Hastings, then Pastor Anthony Hall, and then Pastor Powell from the division.
Yes, first of all, I just want to thank Dr. Green for inviting me on this program. Secondly, I want to thank all our youth and youth leaders who have joined us this afternoon and listening to this program. We know that you are looking forward to leadership from every level of the organization, including the local level. And we want you to know that we do care, we love you, and we are doing everything that we can to make sure that we provide a meaningful and we intentionally plan for you, so that, you know, your ministry, your life can be enhanced, and also you can be free to be in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, where you can do just about whatever you decide in the relation to ministry to advance the cause of God. Also want to say to those who are listening this afternoon, the Montserrat Seventh-day Adventist AY program will be on. It is the Prodigal Son, the Journey Back Home. We're looking forward to you to join us, all those who are in this chat to join us just in a few minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, my farewell comments would be that pastors and church leaders, elders, those who have the dominant roles of leadership in the church, need to be very intentional about the ministry they provide for the young people. As much energy or more as goes into planning a divine service, as going to planning a crusade, the resources, financial and otherwise, that are put into those things need to accompany the effort for our young people. And I do think that we have a good group of young people, but they need leadership, they need guidance. And I have to accept responsibility, and you have to accept responsibility for nurturing them. And whenever one of them drops out, we feel it. We are not being callous about it. We want to see our young people saved. We want to see them grow closer to Jesus Christ. But work for our young people, says Ellen White, has to be intentional work. It has to be incarnational work. Jesus left heaven to become like us in order to save us. And those of us who are adults have to remember that we were once young. We have to become as young people to help them to grow up to be, well, better than us. So let's not give up on our young people. I want to encourage young people themselves to hold on. Whereas Pastor Green says we need to interview those who've left, we have many who've stayed, and maybe we need to ask you why you've stayed and what has been a blessing to you. Until we meet again and as we talk again, may God bless you young persons and the leaders. Keep on doing your best, the best that you can do. Lift the stand if you need to in order to see our young people saved in God's kingdom.
Dr. Green, it's just a privilege to be here with you. Thank you for this invitation, and also to be with Pastor Hall and Pastor Hastings. And I believe this program this evening is showing, letting the young people know the interests that the conference leaders and from the leadership is extending to youth ministry. Much has been said what I would like to say, but I'll just say to the young people and to those in leadership, young people, you are the apple, as the Bible says it, of God's, you are the chosen, you are the one that God really wants. He has great plans for you. Bright future, as Jeremiah 29 verse 11 tells us. He has a bright future for you. He has plans for you, and do not give up on your faith. Give everything that you have to God and your service, and He has great plans for your future. You probably may have gone through some challenges. You might not understand it now, but later on you will. But just move forth and don't give up on your faith. Don't give up on your God. And whatever challenge you're going through as a young person is not unique. God will help you to go forward. To our leaders, we are doing well, but we can do better. We can do better. I'm going to encourage our leaders to make a deliberate effort to see a number of young persons, talking about pass it on and mentorship, and see how you can impact those young people to transform their lives, to become better than you are. Leave a good legacy behind that young people will say, if it wasn't for this leader and that person, I would not be where I am today. We need that mentorship. We need your support. And may God bless the conference, the South Leeward Conference, the administrators, the leaders, the pastors, and the young people, and may we rise and shine to glorify God.
Thank you so much, Pastor Powell, Pastor Hall, Pastor Hastings. Pastor Hall kind of stole a bit of what I was going to say there. We spoke earlier about a 40% leaving, etc. And I wanted to say, well, there is 60% that remains. And so while we mourn the loss of those who have left, we want to celebrate those who have stayed and those who find life in the church meaningful and impacting. And we want to encourage them to keep doing what they're doing to glorify the name of Jesus Christ. Well, that's all for this afternoon. We will be back next week. We have another exciting program. So join us at 3 p.m. We are here every Sabbath afternoon. We are discussing issues. Sometime in the future, as I indicated, we're going to be continuing with part 2 and part 3 of this program. We're talking about relevant information that will impact the lives of our people. Remember, at 4:30 this afternoon, at 1/2 this afternoon, the Montserrat AY Society will be sponsoring the AY program, the online AY program, under the theme, as you heard from Pastor Carl Hastings just now, talking about the journey back home, the prodigal son. Until then, God bless you and stay sweet in Jesus. Thank you all so much. God bless.